Hello, this tutorial is going to cover using a Flex 3 Subversion integration. It's broken into three parts. The first is an introduction to cover some of the basics of revision control, as well as the requirements needed for this tutorial. The second part is really the large substance of the tutorial, and that's the installation of the three major components needed to integrate revision control into the Flex 3 IDE. And that's Subversion, Subclips, and a free Subversion hosting site called Unfuddle. Additionally, we'll also cover the uninstall of subclips. And the last thing we're going to do is actually take a look at some of the common operations, or the basic operations, such as creating or checking out a Subversion project, committing changes, and then a larger topic of branching and tagging that everybody should be familiar with. As an introduction to using Subversion with Flex, we should talk about what revision control software is and why we should use it. Subversion is a revision control software, and revision control software's function is to basically track changes in files. It also has information around those changes that help facilitate organizing groups of developers, for example, who made changes, and managing contention, and a host of other things. It's still actually quite useful for even single developers to use. So one of those features, for example, is branching and tagging. Branching is a function of you have what is often referred to as a main trunk of code, a single central heavily used branch of code. When a developer wants to offshoot a special branch to try out some delicate changes or something like that, they can create a branch and go off and do work in that branch, and then when they feel it is safe enough to move back into a primary, or the primary line of code, the trunk of code, they can merge it back in, and this is an element of revision control software, this merging and branching functionality. Of interest to all developers, single developers or groups of developers, is also tagging, and this is a function that lets you basically snapshot a particular moment in time for the code. So the best example of this, and the most common example of this, is releases. So you have an initial release of some type of Flex application or component or something, some chunk of code that's in your code base is called release 1.0. You release it, and then you go back to the code base and you make changes. People find defects. A lot of things happen. The next release, you can apply a second tag, and it says this is at some point we took a snapshot of the code and created a second tag. The benefit of this is it lets you go back in time and say, hey, I need to recreate or regenerate what my release 1.0 looked like, and you can use this do this with revision control software. And the final part of this introduction is basically outlining some of the requirements. Obviously, we're going to need Subversion, the client elements of Subversion, and one of the other tools we're using is Subclips. One of the really nice things about the Flex IDE is that it's based off of Eclipse, and with that comes a whole host of Eclipse plugins. There's been a lot of work, a lot of community support for very, very useful development plugins, and one of them is a very good one, is called Subclips, and we'll install that and see how that works. The other part that we need for this particular tutorial is some type of external SVN server. Specifically for this tutorial, we'll be using unfuddle.com, but there are plenty of them out there. There's just Google, even Google free Subversion hosting, and you'll find some hits. But in this case, we're going to use Unfuddle because it's very simple and it's free. Let's begin the steps to install the Subversion integration. On our first step to installation, we're going to have to go to the tigris.org site and collect up the Subversion clients for whatever platform we happen to be working on. under the software configuration management category, you'll see Subversion and subclips are prominent, as well as Tortoise SVN, which is for Windows shell extension for supporting Subversion actions out of your Explorer. We're not going to deal with that in this tutorial, but if you happen to be using Windows, it's a great tool for integrating with Explorer. So if we go to Subversion, we'll trace through this. We'll go to the Windows binary section, and I happen to be using Slick SVN. So let's actually go there. And you'll notice that we finally get to the download. So let's go ahead and download this. Okay, once you've downloaded, you're going to have an installer file. I won't step through the installer, just the defaults are going to work fine. And once you have this successfully installed, a good way to test it is that if you bring up a command window and just type svn, you should get this little prompt. It basically tells you that SVN's been successfully installed. So if we look at SVN help, it gives us a bunch of the commands, like merge and commit, and a lot of things that we'll actually be doing through the Flex IDE. Okay, so after you've installed the Subversion client, the next step is to actually install subclips. So we're going to go to the download and install section, and for the Flex IDE, we're going to grab the Eclipse update site URL. You can also grab zip downloads and do it that way, but I found that it's very, very easy to actually just use the update site. So if we grab this, I've just copied out this URL, and then we'll just switch over to Flex and go to the Help Software Updates and then find and install. So we're going to find and install new features. So if we go in here, we don't have the subclip site as one of the sites to include in the search, so we're going to add a new remote site, and let's just call it subclips, and then paste in that URL that we just acquired and click OK. So it's selected for us. So the next step is just click finish and have it go search for updates. Okay, and here is an update box that has, if we expand out, the list of plugin entities that are available via the subclips site. So obviously subclips, the core elements of it are required. So if we click that, we'll select all of that. Another thing that is also, it says it's recommended but is actually required, is the Java HL adapter. At least I've found. Your mileage may vary. But so let's select that and then click next. Agree to all the terms and agreements, and then finish it off. It'll install. Install all. Okay, and then we're going to restart Flex.